Thank you. So I'm Eva, and today I'm going to be talking about migration in Kenyan Ice Age herbivores. So this was a topic I studied for a university kind of like subject, and I found it really interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you. So the last glacial period, colloquially known as the Ice Age, you've probably seen some quality animated films on that subject, but there's a lot going on in that. It's between 110,000 and 11,700 years ago, within the Pleistocene epoch, and this is followed by the Holocene that we're in now. So there are lots of animals that are around in the Ice Age that we see today. So things like the zebra, the wildebeest, the gazelle, as well as ones that aren't really kicking around, or aren't at all kicking around, like the mammoth, a classic one. So with relation to this paper, they're looking at migration as a general concept, so I thought I'd bring it up here. So this is obviously movement of a group to an alternative environment, often cyclical. There's lots of examples of migration in nature we see today. We've got like the monarch butterflies, make that big journey, whales, birds is a good example. And they often move to kind of avoid harsher conditions or find more food, things like that. And lots of the modern day groups of species that existed in the Ice Age are seen to be migrating today. But how does this compare to groups in the Ice Age? We don't really know what was going on back there. So this is what the study I looked at was aiming to find out. So the research paper was by O'Brien et al., and it was limited herbivore migration during the last glacial period of Kenya. So it's set in Eastern Africa. And it builds on previous works using strontium stable isotope analysis. And it's quite a new thing. It's used quite a lot in Europe and North America, but this study is unique in the fact that it's kind of moving into Africa and doing more of that there. So today, as you might have seen in some David Attenborough narrated documentary, there's a lot of big migratory stuff going on in Africa. The blue wildebeest, for example, is like phenomenal. They have massive migrations of like millions for thousands of kilometers to find fresh water vegetation. But how would this have looked thousands of years ago? So to understand how the paper managed to try and figure out if animals were migrating back then, I'm just going to quickly explain a bit about isotopes. Now, just a little disclaimer, I am no expert in chemistry, so it's quite a basic one, but basically an isotope is a form of an element that has a different number of neutrons, which is one of the particles that make up an atom. So it can be used to trace like the geographical origins of strontium like found in fossils. So you look at the ratios of the isotopes, and these ratios relate to a geographical location. It changes across geography. So in the study, they look at 18 different species. I think it's 79 individuals in total, and basically get the strontium from inside the teeth to try and figure out where they kind of resided. So yeah, this is just a little bit more about how it's accumulated. We have it entering, so all sorts of things, but strontium enters through the atmosphere from the bedrock, and it can be drawn up through the roots in the soil into plants, which is then accumulated further when an animal eats the plant. And these things can build up through its lifetime and preserve the place where it had it consumed that plant. So it kind of builds up throughout its life, and the unique ratios reveal to researchers which locality an organism has spent most of its life in. So in this study, measurements were taken from 4 sites across Kenya. So these were kind of chosen where historical migrations are documented to have occurred, and prehistoric migrations have been previously thought to occur, although after this paper they're a bit kind of unsure about some of those. And yeah, so it was 79 fossils in total, a range of different kind of things and cowy kind of things. And they looked at the differences between the strontium isotopes. So there were a few kind of factors that they did take into account in the analysis of the strontium, which was that there is natural variability in how bioavailable the strontium is in different places, so how easy it is for an organism to take it up and incorporate it into its bone structure and things. So Brian et al. Used an isoscape, which was recently developed. Well, this paper came out in 2024, so relatively recently. And so this is a map of isotope distribution. I've got one on the next slide just to show you. And that means that they could kind of confirm if any outlying strontium values were a sign of migration or just a sign of a slightly higher level of bioavailable strontium. So here's the isoscape they used in the study. They've got some quite interesting things here. So they took a range of samples across the area just to check that it fit with the general underlying isoscape. And generally it did, they're pretty accurate. And then these are the 4 fossil sites where they took, so the white circles where they took the samples from. And they've got historic kind of predicted paths of migration on there as well. So this is how they sort of corrected for possible errors in their sample. Another way they did this, which I find really interesting, was that they chose other fossil species that from around this area that are known to not migrate. So they're alive today and were around in the Ice Age, and there's significant evidence backing up the fact that they didn't migrate. So that's the Oribi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and the Bohora reedbuck. So that's the Oribi, that's the Bohora reedbuck, it's quite cute. And they were likely not migrants in the Ice Age due to their small body sizes and ecology, and they don't migrate at all today. I think they're kind of lifelong areas about a 1 kilometer radius, so they really don't move far from home. So in taking the strontium isotope measures from these and seeing the variability, they could compare values from their species that they were analysing to kind of make sure that they were kind of analysing it correctly. So they could see that if the strontium variability matched up between these animals and the ones that they were measuring, then those animals probably didn't migrate as well. So the results are what was very interesting because basically, just to break down this, the grey bits are the modelled local strontium range. So that basically is the bit within which the animal was probably not migratory, and then outside of that is out with the range. And these blue ones here are all modern long distance migrating species. So if we look at these, that's the zebra, Thompson's gazelle. Don't remember what that one is, but these all kind of lie pretty much within the grey band, which generally suggests that while they do migrate today, they weren't so mobile in the past, which is a really interesting thing. Whereas if we look at these 2 that are out with the band, these 2 are the significant ones that were deemed possible to have been migratory. These are both extinct wildebeest. So this suggests that primary migrants of the Ice Age were very different to those of today. As I said, of the 18 species studied, only 2 were migratory. The strange-headed wildebeest, which I think is quite mean, he looks relatively normal, and also the giant wildebeest. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of discovery. There are kind of lots of speculations and implications as to why this has come out in the research. So we think that maybe the way that animals interacted with their environments in East Africa was different in the last glacial period. There are theories that the migratory behaviour didn't develop until the Holocene, or that migration was a lot more restricted in space and time in the past. You can kind of imagine that when there's kind of, in an ice age kind of world, there's ice, of course, maybe more kind of harsh conditions, maybe less opportunity to make long journeys. So that could be something. And what I found most interesting about this is that they suggested that the introduction of domestic livestock after the Ice Age, so coming into the Holocene, could have pushed the kind of native animals into migration. So when they started herding cattle and farming, a lot of the natural populations could have been forced to sort of move and then started to develop these migratory things that continue on today. So there are some interesting things we can take from this. Of course, we are always trying to help the species that are on Earth today, and learning about how different species respond to like different climatic events, different ecosystems, kind of can help us to try and help them in the future. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, please let me know. I'll try my best to answer them.